So recently I was asked to return to Wick's channel, Death of Certainty, for a panel on political violence. And I actually got WYSIWYG on the panel, and then there was another person on the panel named Cypher, and then there was an unfortunate person named Vivian. Now, you're going to hear me occasionally when you listen to the stream, and I actually recommend that you listen to Cypher's version of it because mine kind of sucked. I'm still experimenting with new software that I just got for streaming. I will link his version in the description for this video. But I guess we'll just kind of dive into it. I'm going to go over a lot of different things in different videos. Like I'm going to clip this up into smaller pieces because this was like a 2-hour debate stream. And in particular right now, I want to address the argument about Daryl Davis that I had with Vivian, and also the ending, which is kind of like deleted scenes, so to speak, because it was recorded after the official stream was over. So those of you who listen to the stream perhaps on other outlets would not have heard this part because it was only recorded on my end.
Okay, I feel that this has been one of the major problems in regards to making any kind of headway on the right or the left. Okay, I'm a left-leaning person who spends a lot of time talking to conservatives. My channel has, actually, ironically, a few more conservatives than leftists who listen to it. But my big point is about opening dialogue between these two sides and forcing them to talk to each other like civil human beings so that we can exchange ideas with each other and hopefully be able to come to a better understanding. That used to be the point of all of this. Now it's not. So I don't think, for example, a single thing that happened to that street preacher that day is in any way going to change that person's perspective, nor is it going to change the perspective of anybody who follows them. If anything, it's going to make them believe, you see, the forces of Satan are real and they came after me. This is why I said it has to be effective. If you're just beating people up to feel better, you're not doing anything to actually change any minds or change any people or change the society.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That's why activism has to change. You take a guy like Daryl Davis, who recruited, or rather rescued. Okay, Jesus, are you okay?
No, you said the words Daryl Davis, and that made my microphone fly off my fucking desk because I'm so fucking sick of people bringing that up.
Okay, well,
let me point out. Let him finish his point.
Okay, Daryl Davis went out of his way to humanize people of color, and that's how Ku Klux Klan members eventually just abandon racism because it looks silly.
No.
Okay, so the same thing could be done, across any of these spectrums, and it's considerably more effective. Nobody has changed their perspective because you engaged in violence. The only thing that happens at that point, you might get them to quietly comply, but it certainly doesn't change their attitude when they get to the voting booth, as we found out in 2016. It doesn't change their attitude in anything else they're doing. And if anything, it pushes them to echo chambers where they will be even further radicalized. When I talk
how many points do you want to make?
I'm almost done. I'm almost done. I'm almost done.
Because this is turning into a gish gallop.
Okay, well, I learned it from watching you. So, as I was going to say, okay, when I talked to the leader of the Nazi Party, because he's got a radio show you can call into, he thinks all this stuff is great because now all of a sudden they're able to recruit again. Okay, well, whose fault is that? You could blame it on Trump, but that's not what motivates these people. What motivates these people is seeing the violence and escalation. And then, as Daryl Davis pointed out, you want to make it to the point where any kind of ridiculous beliefs that they have about these people are wrong, not make them look justified. If we're profiling people of color as violent, criminals, don't act like violent criminals as a response to that, because that's what the racists want.
So this is when Vivian gets into their issue specifically with Daryl Davis.
There is zero evidence that Daryl Davis has talked anybody out of the Klan. He claims to have. True. I don't care what you saw in a Netflix documentary.
So the Netflix documentary was only one of many sources that I've used when I researched Daryl Davis's work. But you'll notice how they right off the bat go right after the most in-depth look at Daryl Davis's work to try to discredit them. Let's go on.
So he claims to have 200. He claims to have 200 Klan robes, which we've never seen. He always carries a few around in the back of his trunk. But even if he has 200 Klan robes, there is no way to say that he got those 200 Klan robes from people that he personally convinced to leave the Klan, right? What we do know about Daryl Davis, in fact, is that he bailed out a Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan who fired his gun at Charlottesville, right? That he attended the same person's fucking wedding, right? So for me, Daryl Davis is far too fucking close to the Klan. so far, in fact, that he got a violent criminal who fired his gun at protesters back out on the street.
Now, obviously, I don't advocate using your firearm in any way except for in self-defense, and I don't advocate for participating in any of the violence in Charlottesville. However, Vivian is very strategically leaving out context, which ironically was brought to my attention by, of all places, CNN. Darrell Brooks was already friends with this person and was, basically doing his typical routine of de-radicalizing them, and that's what led to them doing this. Now, the context that's being left out here is that he didn't just fire into the crowd or at protesters, which is kind of what Vivian implies, over the course of this conversation. But the context specifically is that he chose to use his firearm to deter somebody from continuing to use a flamethrower in the direction of other protesters. You'll note that that part of it doesn't come up in the storyline because obviously it doesn't fit the narrative. Daryl Davis had already befriended this person, and this was part of his long game de-radicalization process. And when Vivian brings up that, he attended the wedding, he didn't just attend the wedding. This member of the Ku Klux Klan asked a black man to give the bride away, meaning the man's bride. He asked them to participate in the wedding. So when you discuss evidence about de-radicalization, what blatantly racist white supremacist would ever ask a black man to do that in their wedding? I mean, if you're looking for evidence, the fact that these conversations even take place is the evidence. The fact that these associations even take place is the evidence. Okay? He's trying to suggest that somehow Daryl Davis is becoming more like the Klan out of all of this, but the reality is no member of the Ku Klux Klan who is still thinking and acting exactly like a member of the Ku Klux Klan would even talk to Daryl Davis.
Right.
Okay, if that's your belief, then I'm satisfied in just saying that what you're suggesting is factually incorrect, and we can leave it at that, because that's not true at all. The part about bailing out may have happened, but to suggest that he didn't get anybody out of the Klan is just asinine.
How? Okay, how do you know that he did?
All of the videos taken of him specifically talking to people he befriended in the Klan.
How do you know that he got them out?
Are you suggesting they hired actors or something to talk to him?
I am not.
Why? Now, remember that interaction, because it's going to be important later in the video. Because at this point, I'm just kind of aghast or flabbergasted trying to figure out what Vivian's explanation then is for all of the evidence that Daryl Davis has. Vivian's also later going to claim that they repeatedly asked me for evidence about what Daryl Davis accomplished. You're going to see that that's a lie, because they never asked me for any evidence. They asked me one time, well, how do you know? And then I gave the example of all the videos and pictures of Daryl Davis interacting and talking with members of the Ku Klux Klan.
Don't you want him to be somebody who could convert people? Isn't that a good thing, Vivian?
I would love him to be. I believe that his approach is ineffective and frankly dangerous, right? So I demonstrated the danger of getting too close in that he helped helped a guy who had fired his fucking gun at protesters, a violent Nazi criminal, get back out on the streets, right?
Do you know how he does it?
Sorry?
Do you know how he does it, Vivian?
Do I know how he does what?
Yeah. How he gets people who have such ideologies as strong as theirs to sort of recognize and see the change that needs to happen?
I am not convinced that he does do that. That's the entire point of what we're talking about now.
He helps
them find their own reality.
I have a huge amount of years of experience in this industry, and I'm instantly skeptical of anybody who gets like a huge fucking platform doing quote unquote
because nobody else could have another
because they nearly always turn out to be hacks or turn out to be entirely ineffective. Now, Daryl Davis has appeared, for example. Daryl Davis has appeared, for example, on podcasts with people like Matthew Heimbach, talking about how black people are getting a bit out of control, talking about how there is no such thing as structural racism, for example. Daryl
Davis isn't allowed to have an idea or an opinion of his own because he's a black man that disagrees with you.
Daryl Davis is so close to the Klan that he's starting to take on some of their fucking opinion.
You obviously didn't listen to him on Tim Pool then, did you?
watches Tim Pool.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I don't watch Tim Pool.
Okay.
I haven't watched.
Tim Pool's part of the reason
it.
why. Hold on, can I get this edge in? Tim Pool's part of the reason why we're having this debate. Honestly,
Right.
So
I'm starting to think V-Radio is a bit of a Tim Pool figure. Honestly,
The reason I brought up Tim Pool is that when Daryl Davis went on the Tim Pool podcast, he expressed a lot of very woke ideology, which is the reason why this whole rant by Vivian just shows that they don't really know what they're talking about.
But he doesn't have to, agree with the ideas of systemic racism to have, convince people in the Klan that maybe hating black people is kind of stupid. Okay.
no.
So
you're
if you
absolutely
just
right.
openly deny that he had any success, okay. My counter question to you would be, how many people have you converted?
You're not doing this. You're not fucking reframing this in a disingenuous manner. Okay.
What are you talking about?
What I said was, I have not seen any evidence that suggests that he has.
And
right?
you don't give a shit what was said on that documentary.
And you claim that you have seen that. Well, I've seen the documentary.
Right. So you didn't see any evidence.
No, I saw
was
him
that
with
entire
a fucking,
thing staged?
I saw him with a trunk. I saw him with a trunk full of fucking Klan robes.
So was that staged?
I saw people saying, "Hey, I made friends with Daryl" or whatever.
Let me say
so
this. May I interject and just because this is looping and it's not even productive. Vivian is not convinced. She has not seen any convincing evidence.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be staged. It doesn't have to be staged. I'm saying it doesn't present any. It doesn't present any evidence that he was the one who got these people out.
Okay, I don't agree with you.
I know you don't, because you're an ineffective liberal dipshit.
Let's move on.
Flag on the play, ad hominem, 10-yard penalty. No, the problem is Vivian is losing their patience because people are not just falling all over themselves to listen to everything that they say, no matter how ridiculous. I did not accuse Vivian directly of a conspiracy theory regarding this film that was made on Netflix, but what I never got was a rational explanation for what was presented in that documentary and what has been presented multiple times and on multiple mediums, both left and right, that describe what Daryl Davis did, and I will get into that later in the video.
Okay.
Vivian, do not do that. I have tried.
Viv.
Just real quick, I've tried to make sure that they don't do it to you, right? So
No, they have been doing it to me.
and I've stopped them.
I've
I've muted them. Okay.
I have not done it to you a single time.
No,
You're just uncomfortable with the fact that you're wrong. You're uncomfortable with the fact that you're wrong. No, you are lashing out because you don't have an argument. This is why you're doing this. You are turning into a bully because you're losing and you know it. And I'm calling you out for it right now. That's why you did that. I was polite to you this entire time. No, I'm not done. I was polite to you this entire time. And I suggested to Chris that he be polite.
You were not polite.
No, you are a bully. You're a liar. You're lying right now. That's it. That was my reply. I'm calling you out for it. Your personal attack is coming from a place of insecurity. That's what it's about.
Are you done?
I am now.
Or do you want to continue screaming fucking insult?
So I never at any point insulted Vivian aside from calling them a bully and then eventually confronting them for lying. And I did raise my voice, but point of clarification, I'm not upset at that point. It's just kind of like the Glowicky debate. Like you have to kind of assertively shout over, people who are acting like that. And more importantly, you need to assertively call them out because when they're doing things like that, they are trying to bully you. They are trying to intimidate you. And if you act like you're falling for it, that will have a psychological impact on the audience that's listening. They're trying to assert dominance. And obviously, I'm not just going to sit there and let them do that. But anyway, they continue to just dig themselves an even bigger hole.
No, it's me yelling over. No, all I did was tell you that you're insulting me because you don't have an argument.
I love Vivian. Throws out insults.
You're the only one who
gets
threw any
upset
insults.
when
I
it comes
still
back
haven't
in.
insulted you.
They
I
are
still
talking,
haven't.
not you.
You continuously
not
insulted. You can.
Now, a point of clarification, I guess, that will become even more clear later. Vivian believes that it's an insult for me to prove them wrong. I mean, they're not going to frame it that way, but to them, the idea that I even brought up or called the question when they suggested that, Daryl Davis is not genuine and that there is no evidence of it, and I don't care what you even think about the Netflix documentary, that the fact that I even dared to even debate this with them is an insult. See, earlier in the debate, Vivian just kind of clearly identifies themselves as one of those people who believes that words are violence, that they want to make certain speech illegal because it's inconvenient to them. And again, they're not going to frame it that way. They want to be protected. They want to live in a society where they are protected and allowed to have whatever ridiculous beliefs that they want, and that nobody is allowed to challenge them. And that if anybody does that, then they reserve the right to initiate violence with them for doing so. Now, this next comment from Cypher, you're only going to hear on Cypher's version of the stream, because Cypher was muted at that point and then decided to mute the stream and make their own comment, which was kind of hilarious.
Wow. All right. Like, Vivian is really bad at this, to be honest. Jesus fucking Christ.
Me by not engaging with what I was saying.
I asked you. I didn't say you're lying.
Me.
That is not what I said. You are misrepresenting me
right now. Are you saying it's okay to fuck kids? That's crazy, dude.
What the hell are you talking about?
What
are you saying? Exactly.
See, what's going on here is you're so emotional because you've been backed into a corner that you have to lash out at me because it's the only option you have left.
I'm trying to show you how fucked up it is.
I didn't say that to you.
When you start trying to accuse people of saying things that they haven't said,
understand,
of having views that they don't hold.
I'm going to interject.
Yes, we're insulted.
Okay, I'm going to stop this right now. I'm going to stop this back and forth. We're not friends. I get it. We get it. We only got about 10 more minutes of this. Thank God.
People like him fucked up the Occupy protest.
Stop. Just stop it. Everyone, stop it now. Everyone.
They got people arrested.
Now, I'm not sure if you heard that. Because even after being told to stop, like a child, Vivian has to continue to mutter under their breath. But they said that people like him, meaning me, fucked up the Occupy protests, and then we got people arrested. That's going to come up again later. But the reality is people like Vivian fucked up the Occupy protests, or tried. Occupy made a very clear statement that we don't support violence. And that's why we enjoyed widespread support. That's also why, in contrast, the BLM/Antifa riots of 2020 caused BLM support to go from like 70% that included both Democrats and Republicans at one point down to like 30. And I don't even know where it's at now. But the point is that I didn't fuck up a damn thing. The idiots who believe that violent activism is effective, those are the people who fucked up the protests. So now we had our closing statements and I skipped past them, but everybody else, because of course Vivian got to go last, everybody else on the panel gave polite, pleasant, this is where you can find my info if you want to watch my content answers. And I, at the end of mine, said I enjoyed talking to all of you, including Vivian. Vivian took this as an opportunity, because now nobody else is supposed to be talking, to personally attack everyone on the panel that they didn't agree with, just to take pot shots at them in a format in which they're not supposed to answer them. And it's not really just the insults that's the problem. Vivian lies about the things that we said over the course of the panel at this point, trying to get the last word on the way out like a child.
We've got another dude on the panel who, when asked for evidence to support his position about Daryl Davis, refuses to give it and accuses the other person of conspiratorialism simply for asking for evidence, and then gets upset and complains that he's being bullied when I end up being fucking absolutely exasperated with him not providing any evidence. And it's pathetic.
So this is when the narcissistic gaslighting starts, okay? He suggests that he repeatedly asked me for evidence about Daryl Davis, which is a lie. That never took place. He never asked me for that. He, as I said, made one point to ask me, well, how do you know he did these things? Okay. And I'm going to answer the evidence thing eventually. We're going to get to that. But I just wanted to take a moment and point out that Vivian, again, is in this situation where they need to tell me. It's just like, an abusive boyfriend slapping you around, telling, why did you make me do that to you? And that's going to become more clear later, because they needed to try to justify calling me a dipshit because they were cornered and they knew it.
The only person who is fucking reasonable, and I wish we got to speak more because I think we could actually have a productive discussion about this, was Cypher. And I appreciate Cypher's input into the conversation, but being the one person on the panel who is I guess an advocate in some respects of using political violence where necessary, is a difficult position to be in.
So of course, the only person that they think would have been productive was the person who was agreeing with everything that they said, or at least a lot of it. But I'm going to remind all of you what Cypher actually said while Vivian was ranting right after Vivian had insulted me.
Wow. All right. Like, Vivian is really bad at this, to be honest. Jesus fucking Christ.
So what follows is what was going on after the panel, because Wick left to continue their stream and bring on other people to talk. And I don't think that Vivian realized that I was still recording. But you're going to get to listen to this as essentially the part that you would not have heard if you had watched the stream anywhere else. And you get to listen to everything that I've been prepping you for this whole time. Just outright narcissistic gaslighting.
Yeah, if you ever want to have an actual discussion about Daryl Davis, I think it would be really interesting and enlightening for you. Because I've spent years fucking involved in de-radicalization. And people bring up Daryl Davis all the time. And he's just not as effective as he says he is. He's a man obsessed with his own legend. But that's up to you, V Radio. If you actually want to have a reasonable discussion about it.
Are you actually capable of having reasonable discussions?
I made a point, and you instantly accused me of being a conspiracy theorist and a liar.
That's actually not what I said. I asked
you if
exactly you felt it was staged.
No, as we've already been over, that's not what I said at all.
I asked you to explain what you felt was going on.
No.
And you didn't,
no,
you didn't answer that.
Staged. I did answer it several times, actually.
This is another lie. They didn't answer it several times. They again said once, I don't believe that they hired actors. And then one other time said that it didn't need to be staged. But at this point, Vivian's just point blank lying and acting as though they answered my question. I asked it that many times because they didn't answer me that many times. My question was not an insinuation of like a conspiracy theory on the part of Vivian. I'm legitimately trying to ask them what their explanation is for all of the evidence that Daryl Davis has and all the evidence that is presented in the mainstream media.
And then you accused me of thinking it was staged again and again.
You did it through implication. You did it through implication. You might have not meant to.
Okay. Well,
because you said what? So you said what you said was, what? Do you think it was staged? Do you think it was fake? And the implication of that is that you're implying that that's the only reasonable answer to her disbelief. So you might not have meant to actually do that, but that is how it's going to come across.
I asked and gave them an opportunity to qualify with
you don't. If you
and
want
I said
to,
no.
If you,
I said no several times, and you kept fucking doing it.
Okay. So I'm going to play this again because this was the exchange. I didn't accuse them of a grand conspiracy theory or any of the other words that they just put in my mouth. What I did do was ask them repeatedly for an explanation. Do you believe it was staged? Okay, fine. If you don't believe it was staged, then what evidence do you have that Daryl Davis did not do these things? Okay, they never answered that question. And instead, despite the point blank lie that they just stated, claiming that they said no several times, that it wasn't staged. Okay. And what they do instead is just kind of like try to dance around the issue with saying the things that they did see. But at no point did they ever answer my question, which is, okay, if Daryl Davis didn't do these things, then what happened? What was the reason for the documentary? What is the reason for the numerous articles and videos and interviews that have been, given on Daryl Davis's work? And they never give that answer.
What I said was, I have not seen any evidence that suggests that he has.
And right? You don't give a shit what was said on that documentary.
And you claim that you have seen that. Well, I've seen the documentary.
Right, so you didn't see any evidence.
No, I saw him
that
with
entire thing staged.
I saw him with a trunk. I saw him with a trunk full of fucking clan robes.
Was that staged?
I saw people saying, "Hey, I made friends with Daryl" or whatever.
Let me say this. May I interject and just because this is looping and it's not even productive. Vivian is not convinced. She has not seen any convincing evidence.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be staged. It doesn't have to be staged. I'm saying it doesn't present any.
So what's going to come next is a continuing of the gaslighting, and unfortunately, the other person who was previously on the panel kind of joins in on this gaslighting, because the whole point of this exchange is to try to kind of dress me down and instruct me that it's really my fault that Vivian called me an ineffective liberal dipshit. And the reason why is because I asked them repeatedly, was the documentary staged? Again, they could have given me any answer they wanted to at that point. They didn't give me any answer. Instead, they just say, well, there was no evidence, even though there obviously is. To anyone who's not like emotionally invested in the idea that you can't be nice to people to change them. Like, they were emotionally invested against that. Vivian's worldview is that it is justified to use violence against anyone who does not think the way that you want them to. And when somebody challenges that by having real success, it triggers Vivian, okay? That there's somebody out there that can do this the right way and be a hell of a lot more effective, okay? But anyway, let's continue.
Okay.
If you want to ask those kind of questions, you got to do it in less of a accusatory manner, and that won't whatever trigger. When I say trigger, I don't mean like I don't mean that. So I'm just saying.
The point is, when I perceive somebody being fucking rude to me, I'm going to be rude back to them.
It wasn't rude for being right.
Now, at this point, because of the fact that debate is over, I'm going to go a little cheaper than I normally do. But I often have a saying, don't hate me for being right. That's really what Vivian's problem is. They cannot give a rational explanation for why Daryl Davis, had the Klan robes or had all the pictures with members of the Ku Klux Klan. So it was necessary to attack me personally. That's what their real problem is that they didn't like being wrong.
There you go.
No, I didn't insult you a single time, and I got other people not to insult you, and you chose to call me a dipshit. No, dude, you don't have any intellectual value to add when you get pushed. That's why you do this. There's why there's so many people who do that, debate bro nonsense. Because you need to personally attack people if you're put in a position that you're not comfortable with.
You were personally attacking me.
No, I wasn't. Now, I wasn't.
It's personal attack that I actually called them out on their bullshit. I never at any point insulted them. Again, all they had to do to stop me from asking that question over and over again was to bother to answer it.
I wasn't.
You might not think that you are.
No, I'm not. That's just it. I'm not.
You might not think that you were, right?
No, because I wasn't.
You may not think that you were attacking me. This is just gaslighting. It's not attacking you. Just answer the fucking question.
When you accuse somebody of believing in some mad fucking conspiracy, and when they tell you that no, they don't think it's staged, and then you continue to go, well, did you think it was staged? Right? That is fucking aggressive, man. That is insulting. Okay?
It's going to be interpreted.
No, I don't agree with that at all. No,
and
I think
that
you've already voiced that words are enough for you to believe that you're being attacked violently anyway.
At least you understand now, right? My perspective on how the conversation went and why I reacted to you in the way that you did.
No,
right? In the way that I did.
It's not justified at all.
And if you are interested in having reasonable conversations with incredibly unreasonable people,
very unreasonable people like Vivian,
that's something you should bear in mind in future, actually.
Okay,
because
I don't actually want to sit here and listen to a lecture about this. Your contribution to the panel the entire time was derailing and angry and cussing. And, the difference is I policed Chris. If he started to do that with you, you were not policing yourself at all. I'm not going to sit here and listen to you sanctimoniously lecture me on nonviolent communication when you were literally the person who threw the most insults in the entire goddamn panel. You're just lying. You're lying. You're a narcissistic personality who can't handle when you're wrong, and you lash out at people.
Now you're diagnosing me.
Yes, now I am, because we're no longer debating. This is you trying to talk to me about having a reasonable conversation. There is nothing reasonable about you. People like you are the reason that these panels don't succeed in actually convincing anybody of anything, because you don't care about convincing people. You care about feeling better. That's all you care about. And how do you feel better? You feel better by attacking other people. That's all it is.
I don't feel better.
You don't feel better? I'm glad that you don't feel better. How many people do you convince when you shit on them like that? Does anybody change their opinion? They don't. Because you're doing it to get off on it. You're doing it to hurt people.
So let's cue the John Cleese clip that explains specifically what Vivian's mental problem is.
Seriously, though, we've heard a lot about extremism recently. A nastier, harsher atmosphere everywhere, more abuse and bother boy behavior, less friendliness and tolerance and respect for opponents. All right, but what we never hear about extremism is its advantages. Well, the biggest advantage of extremism is that it makes you feel good, because it provides you with enemies. Let me explain. The great thing about having enemies is that you can pretend that all the badness in the whole world is in your enemies and all the goodness in the whole world is in you. Attractive, isn't it? So, if you have a lot of anger and resentment in you anyway, and you therefore enjoy abusing people, then you can pretend that you're only doing it because these enemies of yours are such very bad persons. And that if it wasn't for them, you'd actually be good-natured and courteous and rational all the time. So, if you want to feel good, become an extremist. Okay, now you have a choice. If you join the hard left, they'll give you their list of authorized enemies. Almost all kinds of authority, especially the police, the city, Americans, judges, multinational corporations, public schools, furriers, newspaper owners, fox hunters, generals, class traitors, and, of course, moderates. Or, if you'd rather be an extremist on the hard right, no problem, fine, you still get a lovely list of enemies, only they're different ones. Noisy minority groups, unions, Russia, weirdos, demonstrators, welfare sponges, meddlesome clergy, peaceniks, the BBC, strikers, social workers, communists, and, of course, moderates. And upstart actors. Now, once you're armed with one of these super lists of enemies, you can be as nasty as you like and yet feel your behaviors morally justified. So you can strut around abusing people and telling them you could eat them for breakfast and still think of yourself as a champion of the truth, a fighter for the greater good, and not the rather sad paranoid schizoid that you really are.
So, in essence, there is nothing noble about behaving like that. And unfortunately, what John Cleese is talking about here is only made 1,000 times worse by the internet. Because now people like Vivian can feel free to go ahead and behave like that from the safety of their keyboard in a way that they probably wouldn't if they were talking to somebody in person. You know, it just makes the problem so much worse. Because now there's like hundreds of people acting like this all over Twitter. They go on Twitter and thinking to themselves, oh man, I had a shitty day. Let me find somebody to shit on so that I can feel better about myself. And then I'll justify it through the idea that I'm doing it because they're such, ideologically evil people. It's just bullshit. It's an attempt to try to look like you're doing something good for society by engaging in what really amounts to just intellectual thuggery. It's just being an intellectual thug.
I didn't say. This is something I want to be very clear.
I'm not doing it to get off on
succeed
people.
in bullying me.
You
You did not succeed in bullying me, but that is exactly what you were trying to do because you were
God.
backed into a corner and you know it. That's what this is
I
about.
asked you for
And that
evidence
kind of
that you
nonsense
lied
needs
to
to
me.
fucking stop. Because
So Daryl Davis's exploits were reported by the New York Times, CNN, NPR, PBS, The Guardian, The Washington Post, CBC, The Independent, Al Jazeera, and even far-left MSNBC in 2 different video article things that I found. There's plenty of evidence out there. And that's just like the evidence that I spent like 5 minutes pulling up. Fox News reported on this. The BBC reported on this. So apparently the entire world of the media is wrong and Vivian is right. When you're that emotionally attached to your perspective, when you're that addicted to your rage and your victimhood, that you really want to justify, you really want to make your abusive behavior okay, then there's no amount of evidence that is enough for you. There isn't. So I spent some time on the motive of like the need to feel like you're some kind of champion of the truth, to believe that what you're doing is actually some kind of moral crusade when you engage in this kind of intellectual thuggery. But the other aspect, obviously, that has to be addressed, which is considerably more common, is that when somebody engages in personal attack like that, as I called them out for directly, it's an attempt to try to distract the audience by implying that I lack credibility somehow, rather than trying to address the evidence presented. That's why ad hominem is a logical fallacy, because making personal attacks on me does not disprove my point at all. But anyway, what's launched next is essentially the end here. And after that, I'll be done. So with, kind of a mic drop. And thanks for tuning in. I'll have some more of these later.
Because we're not convincing anybody on the left acting like that.
Okay,
we're not.
Are you done? Are you done? Okay. So, you and I obviously come from vastly fucking different perspectives, okay? You were sitting there occupied, palling around with the police, probably informing on the anti-fascists while you were there, getting people arrested, fucking beaten up and pepper
Okay, now you're just going to sit here and lie. No, that's not the case.
Hold on.
Because we were trying to convince the police
Stop
to
adding
continue
like
to support us.
this hold on, V. But if you guys could like hold it like fucking two notches.
You've just sat here and said that
you just literally invented a theory that I was getting people arrested. No, I'm not. I'm done talking to you, dude. You're an idiot. We've come to the point here. No, you do not get to invent stories that I'm trying to get people arrested or that I turn anybody in. No, you're an idiot. This is not even worth my time
anymore. Every time I try to talk, you start screaming like a fucking...
Right, because you made up a ridiculous accusation, you fucking idiot.
There, he's muted.
So you just sat here, right, and called me a narcissist, said my only objective on these panels is to hurt people, right? Said that I make myself feel better by hurting people, okay? This is not, this is not the fucking case, all right? I perceived a slight towards myself and I reacted to you, okay? Like, and you want to sit here and fucking psychoanalyze me and then go, oh, you guys are the fucking problem with the left, blah, blah, blah. From my perspective, right, the people who are not willing to recognize the violence being done to other people, okay, those people are the fucking problem with the left, okay? So we both think that the other person is the problem with the left, okay? But we can't have a reasonable discussion about that because every time I try and say something, it's another barrage of fucking like completely made up psychoanalysis of me. Okay, I'm not interested in you, man.
If you guys want to keep doing this, I'm going to mute back and forth just to keep this from like going through the rails. But yeah, I feel like it's going to go a lot better without you guys like screaming over one another.
But no, I'm good with that. The issue is that when somebody engages in that behavior, it's pretty obvious that it's just an attempt to distract away from the weakness of their argument. That's actually what my problem is that nobody's going to come away from this thinking any differently because of anything that Vivian said today. You can't conduct yourself like that and convince anybody to change their minds. I have changed people's minds. This is not how you do it. When you do stuff like invent stories about whether or not I was trying to get anti-fascists arrested or other members of Occupy arrested or palling around with the police as if that's a negative in of itself, as if police are not human beings, yeah, we're not going to find common ground in that. There are bad police and there are good police. There are good people and there are bad people all through the spectrum. And the problem that I'm having, and this is what I called them out directly on, because this is the problem that's actually hurting the movements in general, not just the left, but it's definitely hurting the left a lot. When we can't have reasonable conversations and exchanges with people that we disagree with, we do not in any way further our dialogue. We do not convince anybody. And unfortunately, there's a huge faction on the left that doesn't want anybody to do that. They don't want you to talk to people. And if somebody disagrees with you, or if somebody is speaking that disagrees with you, then you believe that it's justified to be violent against them instead of trying to change them. And this is where we fundamentally disagree. I am not interested in yelling and screaming and trying to hurt people's feelings because I myself feel hurt by something they said. I'm interested in convincing them that perhaps they should look at this differently. Perhaps they should do this differently. Perhaps they should have a different way of going about what they're trying to accomplish in activism. That's where I'm at. So, and that's it. Have a good night.